and welcome to The Green Pretenders,
a sustainably challenged podcast.
My name's Sian.
And my name's Simon, and this episode we're going to talk about diet.
Yes!
We have spoken about diet before, but we want to do a full episode about this topic because it's really, really important. Why is it so important, Sian?
Well, it's important because the meat industry is a nightmare environmentally, and this will not come as a surprise to anyone that's listening now. But we are reflecting on the habits, our own habits and those around us, and we really would love to champion the idea of eating in a way that is environmentally conscious. So what's the stat, Simon? You're better at stats than I am.
So food in general is responsible for a quarter of the emissions. Meat and dairy industry is about 15% in Western countries, that is. So some countries in the world, especially in the global south, are a little bit better with these stats. But the Western world is kind of held as this be-all and end-all, and everyone wants to eat like we do, which is totally wrong. And it's funny, actually, because then a lot of the more conscious people want to eat like people in India or, like other parts of the world. It's all very interesting and circular, really.
And if you're someone who the bigger picture maybe blows your mind a bit and it's easier to have a little sort of relatable microcosm stat, I can tell you that a 4-ounce cheeseburger has a higher carbon footprint than a 10-mile train journey. So the next time you go to eat a beef burger, as you're eating it, just imagine sitting on a train for 10 miles and your act of eating that cheeseburger is spewing out the equivalent amount of CO2. Oh, isn't that scary?
Blowing my mind. Is quite scary, yeah.
Yeah.
So I read this article in The Guardian, and this article mentioned the Planetary Health Diet. It's got such a snazzy name. Do you know what it is?
I want to know. It sounds really great. It sounds almost like something Gwyneth Paltrow might have made up, but like her conscious uncoupling and all of her lovely stuff. So the Planetary Health Diet, I am on board. Tell me about it.
So it was not created by Gwyneth. It was created by the Eat Lancet Commission on Food, Planet and Health, which is basically 37 scientists from around the globe. And they did a little think about diet. And what they came up with is a plant-focused diet that tackles both poor diet in the world and the climate crisis. So just some stats here. 800 million people in the world are hungry. 2 billion people are malnourished. And 2 billion people are obese. So I would say something is very off. And these scientists agree, and that's why they promote this diet. So plant-focused, Sian, you'll be happy to hear that, does not exclude meat.
Yes, and this is important. I guess in case anyone is listening for the first time, we should give a little bit of context for our own relationship with food. And Simon's pointed out that I'll love the plant-focused element because meat for a treat, that is my dietary ethos. I can't deal with absolutism because I've got no backbone or willpower, and the idea of kind of saying I'm vegetarian or vegan scares me because I know I'll trip up. So I go for the meat for a treat way of life, and that means, for a very special occasion, or if someone has cooked me a meal, certain instances which probably add up to like a couple of times a year at the moment, a handful of times. It's gone up in lockdown, I'll tell you that. But so yeah, meat for a treat. And I like the fact that this plant-focused diet has that same ethos, that it's not about never again. It's about changing your habits drastically for the better, for the good, for the greater good.
Exactly. And for me, so I've been vegetarian for 9 years now, coming up to 9 years. But I'm not a vegan. I'm an aspiring vegan, as I call myself. So I create habits, like I've stopped sort of buying animal products, but I will have them, I will consume them when I eat out sometimes, or more often when I go to someone's house and they made a lovely cheesecake, for example. I feel really bad because I also have no backbone, so I feel really bad about saying, nah, I'm a vegan, I'm not going to eat that, So instead, I am vegetarian, so I don't eat meat, but I'm trying to be vegan.
So with that in mind, given that it's both of our experiences that we're not sort of absolute about it, does this plant-focused diet have a recommendation of how many times in a month, for example? What is the advice?
I think it's kind of going back to having meat once a week. So that's 4 times a month, which is actually more than you consume meat, right? I mean, maybe not in lockdown, but I think what you've told me previously is that it's less than once a week.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. And even in lockdown, definitely I don't eat as much as once a week, not at all, no.
Yeah. So in percentages, in Europe, for example, we need to eat 77% less meat. Also, another thing that we need to drastically reduce is sugar. Because sugar is just something that we don't really need. Like, it's the opposite. Like, our body can't actually cope that well. And we need to tackle obesity. We need to tackle diabetes as well. So, yeah, less sugar, definitely, as well.
And I think the scary thing is about these products, dairy, meat, sugar, is that the governments and big business corporations, they have a vested interest in keeping us addicted to them almost. So like how back in the day, smoking was advertised as something that was almost good for your health, because the people that were doing that research and the people that were putting out those adverts, that was their agenda. And so similarly now, you know, we've got things that are being thrown in our faces telling us that this stuff is good, it's delicious, almost that it's healthy in some instances. And we need to kind of understand that we're not being presented with objective facts. We're being presented with a spin and an agenda, and it's in their interest to keep us eating it. So we need to sort of like override that with sugar and with meat and with dairy.
Speaking of governments, I mean, you know, probably our listeners know that we are big fans of the current government in the UK.
I just love them so much.
You know, governments have a lot of responsibility. Surprise, surprise. But in the context of food, you know, they actually set dietary guidelines. And that is actually the reason why The Guardian wrote that article, is because the current government's dietary guidelines are way off. They're just off. It's just not true what they're telling you. So they also buy food for schools, for example. So I did not go to school in the UK, so maybe, Sian, you can tell us a bit more about what school lunches look like.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember in primary school, I took my own packed lunches, but I would sit with the kids who had the school lunches. And in both instances, in my packed lunch and the school lunches, there was not a day where there wasn't a meat item. You know, it's that classic thing, which I think in Britain is very prevalent, of meat and 2 veg. That's a meal. So I remember watching the kids line up to get, you know, they get their trays, and at that time at least, it was like, right, here's your meat, it's a sausage, or it's some chicken nuggets, and then here's some peas and carrots, and then maybe here's some potatoes. And that was the pattern of every lunchtime. I think now that is changing, isn't it? Because Jamie Oliver has done an amazing job at trying to affect school meals and making that something that kids are exposed to from an early age, that meat isn't necessary and that healthy food is delicious and stuff like that. So I do think it's different from when I was a kid, but certainly then it was like it was a meat feast, a meat fest.
Meat fest. Yeah, and I think if it is changing, it's changing too slowly. And often because we also have a massive gap between rich and poor people in this country, and often these poor kids are actually malnourished. You know, because the school meal is actually the one hearty meal that they get. So we need to make sure that is good quality food.
Yeah, and as you say, cracking down is the key, because at the moment the trajectory is that meat consumption's rising and rising and rising, and you know it's predicted that by 2050 meat consumption will have risen by 75% and dairy by 65%. And I read a stat that said that in China, you know, this year compared to a couple of years ago, they're already eating like 20 million tons more meat and dairy a year. So it's just the cracking down element and the government intervention is absolutely key, because the figures are rising and rising and rising, and that's not going to stop unless there's some global, big style intervention and change.
And I think we also need to realize that not all meat is created equal. So obviously, I mean, there's factory farming, and these are not happy, healthy cows that many people are eating. They're probably full of hormones, and with a new trade deal with the US coming along, there could be some horrible changes for the worse in the UK. So we need to hold this government accountable to that as well, that we don't want to lower food standards, because it would mean a poorer diet, an even poorer diet for the people in this country.
Yeah, I think America are the second largest consumer of meat by country after China, and definitely the largest consumer of beef. So yeah, America needs to get their shit together.
So yeah, we need to regulate food companies, and in this sort of climate that we're currently in, it's more of a deregulate everything, the market will solve all your problems. And that's just not true. We, especially now, we see in this pandemic that we do need government intervention, because otherwise no one knows what to do, and companies will just do what they think, what they know brings them the most money.
I think there is an amazing wave of creative people putting stuff out there in order to change people's opinions. So there are things like all of these brilliant documentaries that have been circulating recently, and I know that a lot of theatre and a lot of writing and a lot of art is being made with the view of changing people's perspective on meat and plastic and all sorts of things. So of those documentaries and stuff, have you watched any of the big ones like Cowspiracy and things like that?
Yes, so I've watched Cowspiracy, I've watched Earthlings, I've watched What the Health as well, which I thought was really good. And it sort of deals with, well, they all deal with similar things, but then also differences. I think it was What the Health that deals with diabetes, and how you can actually get rid of a lot of medication when you actually go on a vegan diet. So there's so many amazing things that you can do through diet. And Earthlings, for example, deals more with the animal rights aspect and the ethical aspect of meat consumption and meat production. Which ones have you seen?
Well, weirdly, I've never watched any of them, and a really good friend of mine watched some recently, and he's been messaging me about them and how they've sort of changed his outlook. And it made me realise that I've never watched them because I almost don't need convincing. Well, I've decided for myself that I didn't need convincing of anything. I'm already fully on board with all of it, with the dietary aspect, with the environmental aspect, with the animal cruelty aspect. The only thing that's left for me is my own willpower, and I know that doesn't say a lot for me as a person, because it's like I literally have all of the information there and I still can't fucking bring myself to just be a vegan, for example. So I'm a shitty person, but that's why I've never kind of gone out of my way to watch any. But I am going to now, because my friend has given me a bit of a rundown of the ones he's watched so far. He wasn't that enamoured with Cowspiracy, actually. He said it was quite sort of aggressive and virtue signalling, and it was all a bit much. But he loved The Game Changers. And the reason being that The Game Changers, I think a lot of these documentaries have been made with a bit of a shock factor to them, and it's kind of almost trying to shock you into going vegetarian by showing you how disgusting the meat industry is, and it's all a bit much. Whereas The Game Changers has a bit more of a carrot approach, like the carrot and stick. It's got the carrot approach because they are showing you the value of a vegan diet. So it's like a literal carrot and stick, and it's got like amazing stories about athletes that have gone vegan and how it's improved their performance, and just stuff that is like, oh wow, I actually want to do that, not just because I'm being made to feel guilty, but because I believe it will improve my life. So I'm going to watch The Game Changers, and that is available on Netflix at the moment to watch.
Amazing. And that's actually one that I haven't seen, so let's watch it together.
Great. Okay. And then, and everyone, if you're listening now and you haven't watched it, let's have a Green Pretenders film club. Let's all watch The Game Changers on Netflix, and then we can all talk about what we thought about it.
That sounds amazing. Also, because you mentioned value, actually a mutual friend of ours that went to drama school with us, Adrian, he when I was at drama school, I was very, very poor. And I talked to him about diet, and I mean, he was big, like, chicken breast eater.
He really was.
Because he worked out a lot and stuff. But I think in general, like, his diet was quite healthy. Like, he did eat meat, but it was sort of quality meat, you know, like he wouldn't eat pizza or like burgers or things like that. And I said, well, you know, I'm so poor. And that was back in, 2014, 15. I was so poor, I can't really buy quality food. And then he said to me, well, but it's really an investment, isn't it? Like, in the long run, you invest in your health. And I think that sort of blew my mind, because it's so true. Like, at the moment, you might think, oh, like, it's really expensive to buy good food. But it is really, like, in the long run, when you think, when you're 60, 70, 80, then you are going to pay the price for all that shit food that you ate when you were younger.
Yeah.
And if you continue eating that, you'll get a lot of health problems, and that will maybe keep you from working. And, so there's all sorts of problems. So I think we also need to think in advance, and we need to think ahead and think like we are investing in ourselves. Like, I don't want to, preach and say like your body's your temple, but it kind of is, like it's all we have.
I've been obsessed with this quote recently that I shared on social media. It's a lady called Anna Lapay, and she's an American author and an expert on food systems and environmentalism. And she says, every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want. And I think that applies here as well, because it's the kind of future you want, the kind of health and body you want. So I just love that. It's like, see spending money, as you say, as an investment in something that's bigger than you are, and that's about your future and the future of everyone else around us. And yeah, I like that a lot.
Yes, I love that as well. It's like, it goes within the be the change you want to see kind of thing.
Yeah. So have we got any other stats for our listeners? As people know that are friends of this podcast, we don't tend to be that stat heavy, because we want to just kind of make it a really universal thing that we're all just chatting basically, but it's good to have some cold hard facts to hinge your opinions on.
Yeah, maybe we could talk about food waste. I've got a stat for you. So currently 30% of our food is wasted.
Bloody hell,
that is insane.
Yeah. And
they say we need to halve that to 15%, which is still a lot of food that goes into the bin. And speaking of going into the bin, it's actually also very relevant in which bin your food waste goes. Where should it go?
The compost bin?
Yes, the food waste bin. Because actually food waste in our general waste, in our general rubbish, which then goes to landfill, actually creates a lot of methane when it, decomposes among the plastic and the electric waste that wasn't recycled properly. So food waste is a major contributor towards global heating, because methane is also a lot worse than CO2, for example. And by putting it into the compost bin, we actually create new soil. We re-nourish the earth again with lovely compost, where then new plants can grow. So, it's really dear to me, this topic of compost, and it's a little bit mucky, and but I love that. Our food waste is actually not picked up where I live, because I live on the high street and there's shops below, so there's the council actually doesn't collect it. So what I've done, I asked a friend to order a free food waste bin from the council to her house, because you can do that, even though she had one, but she ordered it for me. And I now carry my food waste to the next big food waste bin, which is at a council estate. And I love doing that. I love taking my little caddy and walking there, because I think all this food waste is just not going into landfill.
This is so important as well, because I think we need to do an expose on landfills at some point. We can dedicate a whole episode to it. But my partner recently was telling me about how when food waste ends up in a landfill, sometimes it will just never break down, because landfills are designed in a way to prevent the breakdown of the substances within it, so that they don't end up leaking out into the surrounding environment. So the whole point of a landfill is to keep everything sort of as it is. So even if you're not composting for your own use, even if you're not creating a compost bin of your own, you need to put the food waste in a food waste bin to make sure that it's going to end up being broken down properly. So yeah, as Simon says, like, you can order your food waste bin from your council, keep it outside on a window ledge so that it doesn't make your house smell and you don't get any flies, and it's just a very easy thing. You won't get a smelly bin as well. If you normally put your food waste in your regular bin, that'll end up smelling. So yeah, it's a no-brainer.
It really is, yeah. And I think a lot of people kind of don't think about it because they're just like, it goes in the black bin and then away with it. But it's not away with it. It's never away with it. Someone has to deal with that, and it's out of sight, out of mind. We need to get rid of that mindset.
Yeah, for sure. And I think some people say, can you put meat in that food bin? And yes, you can. You can put meat in the green bin. It will be smellier and could attract more flies than other stuff, but it's all good. So obviously we don't really want to be eating meat or wasting meat in the first place, but if you're that far along, then yeah, pop it in the food waste bin.
So I think what we take away is that we need to reduce meat,
and baby steps are fine. If it's one day a week, or if it's just one meat type that you're cutting out at first, start with beef, for example. That's all good. We got your back. We're here for you.
Exactly. We're definitely here for you, and we don't expect you to be perfect. We're not perfect. The Green Pretenders is not about perfection at all. It's about trying.
Preach.
All right, Shan, what is your eco poop? I haven't done that in a long time. It's very satisfying.
Oh yeah, eco poop. If you are listening for the first time, we're not crazy, but every episode we do an eco whoop and an eco poop to celebrate and lament the highs and lows of our sustainable life. So, eco poop is linked to Plastic Free July. This month we've been trying to eradicate single-use plastic, and it's just the fact that it's so bloody hard to do on the high street. So loose fruit and veg having little plastic stickers on them, or you can't for love nor money get a kind of snack like crisps in a plastic-free packaging. Even this lovely brand called what's it called? Off the Beaten Earth? No. I can't remember, but it's a posh crisp brand, and it comes in a lovely cardboard rustic package, but then they've put the plastic window in so you can see inside and look at what the crisps look like, and it's like, for God's sake, that could have been plastic free. So yeah, that's my eco poop. Come on, high street supermarkets, big brands, give us the plastic free.
Yes, or give us biodegradable plastic. It is out there, it's available. You need to step up your game.
Yes. What's yours?
Mine is also kind of tied into Plastic Free July. It's plastic grass.
Oh God.
Why the hell? So I heard this. So I heard this on Radio 4 actually the other day, and there was this presenter. I can't remember her name now, but she was like, "I've got a plastic lawn. It's Kensington green. It's so amazing. I don't need to mow my lawn. Yada yada yada." And then there was this other guy who said, "Plastic lawns horrible. They actually prevent the ground from soaking up water, so that means it increases the risk of flooding. There's no bee ever that's going to be happy on a plastic lawn, and after a couple of years, they probably go very mucky and very gross and don't look nice anymore. And then where do they go? They go into landfill, which is an overall disaster." I don't know what the obsession is with plastic lawns. If you're lucky enough to have a garden, then at least, if you're not growing wildflowers, grow real grass.
Oh God.
I mean, it's just insane. People are so like, I don't have any time, but I want to have the garden. No, you can't have the garden and not mow a lawn.
It's very Desperate Housewives, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, but on the plus side, some eco whoops coming at you. Having talked a bit about game changers and the things that we might watch to help us inspire ourselves on the meat-free aspirational journey, my eco whoop is the film Okja. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen that one.
It's directed by recent Oscar winner Bong Joon-ho, who directed Parasite.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this was one of his earlier films. 2017 it was, but it's this beautiful film about a breed of sort of super pig that they end up what do you call it, manufacture them almost to eat, so that the meat industry can absolutely boom. And it's about this young girl's relationship with her pet pig Okja. It's got Tilda Swinton in it. It's just very heartwarming and beautiful. And I can tell you now, Simon, that after watching that film, I sat on my sofa and cried and vowed never to eat meat again. Unfortunately, the emotional response in me kind of lost itself after a couple of months. So maybe I just need to watch that, actually. Maybe I just need to watch it once a week, and then that will be me set for life. But it's a beautiful film, Okja, Okja. And I think it is also available on Netflix. So that's my eco whoop.
My eco whoop is a book by the author Jonathan Safran Foer. You might know Jonathan Safran Foer's earlier book, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which was also turned into a film with Tom Hanks and Sandra Bullock. But this book is called Eating Animals. And I kid you not, that book has turned me into a vegetarian. It was a recommendation by my sister Anne, who went vegetarian before me. And she had also read that book. So she recommended it, I read it, and I was like, that's it. I'm a veggie now. Preach, oh Lord.
Yeah.
Never will I eat meat again. And I haven't. So yeah, I can only recommend it. It's really well written. Like, he's such a good writer, and he also talks about wanting to be a role model for his son and the sort of world that he wants his children to, or the children of the world to grow up in. And it deals mainly with the US and factory farming, and it's quite horrible and a really good read. I recommend it, Eating Animals.
Beautiful. So we can have a film club and a book club.
Yeah.
Well, I would like my parting words for this episode to be meat for a treat. I'm going to get a revolution going with this, Simon, one day. # meat for a treat.
Meat for a treat.
Aspiring veganism.
That's it for this episode.
Yeah, you can get in touch with us on social media at Green Pretenders.
Or you can write us an email, thegreenpretenders@gmail.com. Or if you are a fan of the podcast and you're listening on iTunes, please leave us a review. That would be really, really great. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe.
And also, please do remember, the pod is always greener.